Well, Kim, that was a very strong speech from Benjamin Netanyahu. He also did somewhat of a show and tell, holding up a piece of metal that he claims is an Iranian drone that flew into Israeli airspace earlier this year. He also went on to talk about what he thinks Iran's ambitions are in Syria. He says they're trying to establish a permanent base in Syria, and Netanyahu said that he will go on to act if against both Iran and its proxies if that sort of behaviour in Syria does continue. Now, to discuss this further, I'm joined by a man who's actually sitting in the audience watching this speech. It's Professor James Davis from the University of St Gallen, Swiss University. It was a strong speech. He always delivers a fairly interesting, if nothing else, speech. What was your take on it?
I think the Prime Minister came here with a clear message. He used the floor in a very effective way to deliver that message, and that message was Iran is the biggest threat to peace in the region and perhaps the world, and if Iran messes with Israel, it will pay a price. So this was a message of a warning to the world and also a threat, a deterrent threat to the regime in Tehran.
I mentioned earlier there he's accused Iran of trying to create a permanent base there in Syria. Do you think that's the case?
Well, I think the Iranians are clearly trying to step into the void that's been created, or the chaos that's been created by the Syrian civil war. They're active in trying to expand their influence throughout the region. The question, of course, is why? Is this an effort to somehow try to dominate in an aggressive way the region, or is this somehow an outgrowth of their own feeling of insecurity with an enemy to their west in Saudi Arabia, with American forces in the region? You have to first try to understand the other side in order to effectively create a policy for coping with them.
There was also a lot of talk about the Iran nuclear deal. Of course, we know that the Americans want to put a stop to it, don't think it's strong enough. He seems somewhat ambivalent about it, saying, well, if you can keep the Iranian nuclear ambitions in check with the deal, then keep it. If you can't, then scrap it. But he seems to think that certainly building up nuclear capability is still going on in Iran. Is that what can we take that, what he's saying there?
Well, I tend to think that Iran is probably continuing its R&D and probably keeping that option open. But we do have an agreement, and by all takes, it seems that the Iranians are sticking by that agreement. I would note that that the agreement does have a sunshine clause, a sunset clause. It's only good for a set period of time. But during that time, of course, we should be trying to reach out to the Iranian society, building up civil society, building up an interest in the Iranian population in good relations with the rest of the world, because that's the way you're going to change Iran from the inside, and through changing Iran from the inside, you have the potential for changing their foreign policy.
And just very quickly, we know the Iranian Foreign Minister himself is going to deliver a speech in a couple of hours here. Do you expect to see very strong rhetoric coming back at Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel?
I think the Iranian Foreign Minister has shown us in many fora over the last years that he's a smooth character. I think he'll be very calm. I think he'll try to reassure the world that Iran is not a threat to regional or world peace. I don't think we'll all believe everything he says, but by the same token, there were parts of the speech of Netanyahu that one might take issue with as well.
We'll certainly all be watching that one, indeed. Thank you very much. Professor James Davis there from the University of Gallen. Kim, this conference is wrapping up. As we mentioned there, we will hear from the Iranian Foreign Minister, so certainly more headlines, I suspect, to come from here.